the way we view meetings are that, particularly the internal meetings, meetings are the medium for managerial work. And often when I'm talking to new customers, the one thing that comes up is the word meetings a lot. And I think the one thing I like to steer the conversation back to is that other word that's kind of hidden in that sentence, manager. But the software, for the most part, that exists helps us meet. That just doesn't help us manage. And what we want to do is help the group that's here manage their team, manage the events that are on the calendar, and not just have those meetings. For the most part, those tools for management haven't really changed, right? We've talked about goals and one-on-ones and performance and KPIs forever, and we're largely following the same playbooks. And we think it's time that software came in to help. So everyone here knows this, but the way we view our app is that Hypercontext helps managers run more effective meetings by making sure those meetings have an agenda, notes, and goals that tie back to OKRs. The way that works is all of your recurring meetings can have a workspace that you can add right to the calendar event. That'll give you a shared agenda and a collaborative place to take notes, track next steps for accountability, progress, and talk about, update, communicate on your goals and objectives that are important. That's the quick background. I promised you, for those who were here earlier, I wasn't going to kill your slides. We're going to jump into a demo and spend more time demoing and showing the stuff we've been working on that is out, you might just not have seen, and stuff that is like very, very soon to be out. So with that, I'm going to actually stop sharing, pass the mic over to Graham, and let him take it over from here. For those that don't know, I'm Brennan, CEO, co-founder, and taking over is Graham, our CTO and co-founder.
I've taken over.
Before we start, there is one anonymous attendee who's asked a question. I don't know if you want to answer it.
Let's do it.
So before we start, how many lemons are on Graham's shirt is the question.
Good luck.
Okay.
It's a pattern. It's all over the place. I have no idea.
Okay.
More than you think.
More than you think. All right.
Yeah. Fun shirt on for a fun demo. This is the Q3 changelog. So we have lots of cool stuff that we've been working on over the last, well, really, we always work on lots of cool stuff. Let's be honest. But this is the stuff that we rolled out throughout the entire Q3. So what's that for us? That's July, August, and September. And then a couple things I think Brennan will show will arrive shortly after this. So I think you might see some things that you don't have access to today, but you will shortly. So I've shared my screen. Hopefully it's big enough for everyone to see. So there's a couple things for us to talk through. First of all, I'm in dark mode. Is everyone cool with me doing dark mode, or do you want me to switch over to the blinding bright version of Hypercontext?
I think everyone votes light mode.
Okay, perfect. Well, here we are, light mode. Okay, so I'm on light mode. And then I guess the first thing we'll talk about is just the UI changes just to help orient us into the space. There has been a couple changes to how we organize information. So I'll go over that first, and then we'll jump into some of the new features, including the one you're probably seeing right here. So this is Hypercontext. I'm inside of a workspace. A workspace is basically where your team meets for this type of event. So for this is a changelog event. And so people here will have the agendas for all the meetings for this recurring meeting, and the next steps and goals could be associated with this as well, which I'll talk about shortly. This is the navigation bar at the top. There's two levels of navigation. There is the overarching, like I guess your organizational navigation, but also personal. So this is where your personal settings are. That hasn't changed at all. What we did change here is this, the workspace navigation bar. So you'll notice we're missing a button from before. So we used to have a button here that was called past meetings. We've actually collapsed that into a little icon over here, the past meeting section. And that's to free up some space to really focus on the areas that we think are the most important when you're running your meetings. So you'll spend most of your time on the agenda. That's why it's top and center. You'll also want to interact with your next steps or any of the action items you have outstanding. So that's the next steps tab. And then for you to get the most out of your team, to make sure you're having those full holistic conversations, you'll want to use insights. And then of course, setting your goals and OKRs here. So past meetings. And then this button here is the scratch pad. Scratch pad, for those who don't use it that often, it's one of our lower use features, which is actually a pretty cool feature. You can pop it out and you have the ability to have a scratch pad that's shared with any of the attendees. So you can have, like, it could be a running list of it could be your goals if you don't have access to the goals feature. So it's a good way to not have to pay for a business suite. Just add your goals here. You can also have just items you want to put on the agenda, but maybe not now, maybe you want them in the future. And then this section here is shared amongst all the guests, but there is a private section which is only visible to you. And here's where you could put up those items that you want to talk about in the future, or have like other information specific to, like, if it's a one-on-one, any kind of personal information that you'd want to remember for the person you're talking to. So maybe like spouse's name, favorite coffee, favorite place to live, names of the dogs, names of pets, or names of children and names of the pets.
We used this recently with our planning meeting. There was some pre-reads that went out and things that had to be done. And a lot of folks took their notes in the private scratchpad. So when the meeting actually came around and, I was asking some of the questions, they opened up their notes and shared what they wanted to share. Useful for a lot of reasons, a little bit hidden, but we're checking out for sure.
All right. And then moving forward here, so you see this little icon. I'll talk about this icon in a second. It's part of our real-time functionality, which is a whole new layer on top of our app. It's super cool. We'll get there. And then a share button lets you invite more guests. There's actually 3 different ways you can share to get people into your meeting. You can click this little section here, which pops up our little invite teammates modal. You can click on the share, does the same thing, or you can, inside the settings, go to the agenda settings and actually do it there as well. So that is the workspace level navigation. So I realize now I've actually collapsed the sidebar. So your Hypercontext may look like that, where you have workspaces and calendars. So I just usually hide all that to really focus in on the meeting that I'm having. Cool. That's the navigation changes. We also did a whole bunch of work with the icons and just working on the layers and the color across all the rest of the app to make it look cleaner. So if you've noticed, you've come to Hypercontext and you're like, it's cleaner. I don't know why it's cleaner, but it is. It's just because it has a little more sharpness to some of our icons. And we also now use the native emojis. So before we were using ones for the web browser for Chrome, and then we would swap out the actual Unicodes for images. Now we just load up the icons. So if you're seeing this live, I'm on a Mac. So I have the Mac looking or the Apple looking emojis. If you're on a PC, you'll see PC versions. It's just, if you're on your phone, you'll see the different versions based on your operating system. So a little cleaner, a little more fluid in its interface.
Same if you're using emojis in your notes, they're all going to look the same. But yeah, Graham is right. Lots of subtle changes, small changes you may or may not have noticed. Hopefully you felt, and a ton of bug fixes too. So I don't think we're going to be covering the bug fixes, but we have been working pretty hard on bug fixes. Still, we'll continue to work on the bug fixes. I'm
going to talk about this button here. So you probably see on your meetings right now, if you're using Hypercontext, a finish meeting button. And we have spent probably forever on this app trying to make that button easy to click for customers. It seems like a very daunting task because it's part of our finishing meeting hygiene process. So we've done a pretty good job of create the agenda in advance, make sure it's filled with good, important information for you to talk about with your team, have that pre-meeting conversation or thought track that you'll just know what you're going to talk about before the meeting starts. Start the meeting, have it, document all the notes. And then at the very end of your meeting, we've had this button there forever, which is the finish meeting button. And you click that, and then that takes all the items you discussed, archives it into a past meeting. And then it may send off, depending on how your configuration is set up inside of Hypercontext, it may send off an email to you with all the meeting notes. So because of that, it's a button you actually have to actively click. And when you do so, it's destructive in that it moves content off of the agenda. It archives it, so you never lose it. And then it does send you emails. So there is that potential annoyance to your peers if you click the button. So we've tried to downplay that button in our app for the longest time, and we haven't really been able to successfully do it. We changed the language, called it share notes. We called it like archive and send completed items. I think we have finally figured it out. I'm hopeful. This is the time. It's working. So we're now calling it as one of our automations, which is an auto setup automation. So when you connect Hypercontext to a calendar event, so you can see I've done that here, and this is also part of the UI design changes. This is what it looks like when you connect a calendar. It's going to take the information from that, store it, and then it's going to know exactly what to do when the meeting starts. So when the meeting starts, it's going to have a countdown clock. So you'll see there's 42 minutes left in this meeting. when that meeting finishes, it's going to say, I'll show you an example of this. Here's a meeting I had earlier today. This
I
one.
think it finished.
Oh, it finished. Okay. Well, it would have said ended. I thought I had this timed perfectly. It looks like I was off by like 5 minutes. Oh well, next time.
It was close.
It's close. So it would say the meeting ended and then a countdown clock of when it's going to send the meeting notes. So I think for now we've hard coded it's going to be an hour after the meeting finishes. It will perform the end meeting rituals, which is close all the items into a past meeting and send off the notes to you. And then if you've decided to clear the slate on your agenda, it will get rid of all the items and bring back a fresh list of new items. And all that is configurable inside of this little settings tab here, this little, what do you call that, a kebab or that ellipses drop down.
Overflow menu kebab. The, it's something that I'm pretty excited about getting into the hands of customers. One thing I think that I've heard over and over again, I'm not sure if the folks that are here have felt this, but often when a meeting ends, we close the tab, close our browser, switch to a different URL, turn our brain to a different subject. And it's very easy to forget that ending or the after the meeting ritual. And so often I think I've heard our users say, well, they show up to the next one-on-one or they show up to the next team meeting and oops, we forgot to press that button last week. We're going to press it now. So I think on top of this, actually, if you don't want the automation on, you can get that button back, but it is, instead of us auto clicking a finish meeting button, we're automatically setting up that next meeting. So even just the concept of finishing your last meeting has been replaced a little bit with that concept of setting up your next meeting. We're going to click that button for you. And I think on top of that, one thing that we've been using this for, I don't know, a couple of weeks, Graham?
Yeah, I'd say a couple of weeks.
I found very helpful is this countdown timer, right? We've got 39 minutes left in our webinar here, and it's not in your face, but it's enough there to let you know, like, oh yeah, time is ticking, right? Like we've got to cover a lot of things, and when eventually this meeting's over, we'll have a big thing that says, hey, it's over. Keeps momentum, I think, with the team.
Exactly. And what's cool is that this was requested by customers since I think the beginning of us having an agenda. They wanted a countdown clock, and we're like, oh, you don't need a countdown clock. You can keep tabs in your head of when the meeting's going to end. It's been incredibly useful to see this on the agenda, specifically in the Chrome extension, where it's part of the meeting, the Google Meet, because all the same information, like if I make my screen really tiny, all of it still exists on the sidebar to your Google Meet. It's perfect.
Definitely is something that I didn't really want. Customers told me we should do, and we did it. And now I'm like, yeah, customers are right. That's great.
Customers are always right. Always listen to your customers. If you're building a product out there, always listen to your customers. Always.
Absolutely.
That's the key learning over the last 12 years of building product has been just listen to the customers. They know what they want.
Speaking of which, I annoy, I'm sure everyone here often for feedback calls and things like that. Please do book. We genuinely do listen to customers, I think more so than almost any other company out there. But also, if you're on the call now, it's rare to get live Graham time. So feel free to ask a question or jump in the chat and request a feature. He has a lot of power and sway.
I'll take it. Yeah, I was going to add on to that. If I see something that makes no sense, I will make sure it gets resolved fairly quickly. It's something I do. Cool. So that is the auto setup flow, replacing the finish meeting. And it's really just a mental shift from, instead of finishing it, you are just getting the next one ready to go. And you can get it ready to go right after the meeting ends, or you can wait until just before the next meeting is supposed to start. So it's up to you to decide how that goes, but we'll finish those notes for you and send them off to you. And that's all configurable inside of the settings menu. So if I click on the little kebabs, this is how you manage it. So the settings, it looks a bit different than what it was before. The stuff up here is the same as your existing menu. I forget exactly. We've had this out for so long that I forget what the existing one looks like, but I'm pretty sure it's part of this drop down up here.
Yeah, I don't think any of it is even there. We've moved compact from below the title, voting from below the title.
Yeah, but the email minute meeting notes, the save agendas template, that's all inside.
Email meeting notes is new.
Is it really?
Yeah, customers don't have that. Mark all is red is there, print is there, save agendas template is there. compact, and
Build
voting
these out
is in a
faster.
different spot. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's assume it's all brand new functionality right here. We'll go over every one of them just so you know what all the sections are. So I'll start at the top. Email meeting notes is exactly that. You click that button, everyone invited will get the notes into their email, regardless of if you finished it or not. So if you did hit this button, it doesn't mean your items will close on the agenda. We'll just send you the current state as is. Print agenda will take this pretty view and create a PDF for you, and you can print that off yourself. So you can send that if you want to send someone a hard copy without having like the notes in email, which may or may not format properly depending on how that person's email inbox is configured. You can print agenda, get the PDF, send that off to them. If you really enjoy the format for your workspace, you can save it as a template and use it for your other meetings. We find this is usually at the start when you have a lot of one-on-ones, you'll make one really nice one. And if your team grows, you'll save it as a template. And then you have this one-on-one or like Graham's one-on-one template for new engineers. And then I would have that saved so I can quickly add all the items for the standing agenda back onto the agenda for each one of those one-on-ones. The compact view, this used to exist here, I believe, as a little drop-down setting. We've collapsed that under the little ellipses. So you can turn that on and it's going to hide all the descriptions, the summaries, the next steps, all into just the items. So this is just a nice clean way, depending on how big your agenda is. If it's a long agenda, you may want to do that just to be able to navigate through it. And we've also moved the turn. Actually, we've kind of removed all the sorting options. There used to be a bunch up here where you could sort by votes, sort by time, and sort by priority. We found that all of our customers really just use the priority setting because that's the one you can do the drag and drops on. So you can drag and drop any of these items around. If I move it down, it moves as well. And so we figured, let's just go with the default, cleans up our interface a bit more. And then we did leave the powerful voting because if your team size is large, like with 3 people, drag and drop is fine. But if I turn on voting, let's say I had a team size of 20 or more, then we'd be able to vote on what we discuss. And then maybe the person running the meeting will just go sort by votes, and then whatever's on the top of the list, they'll talk about first. So it's a good way to have like an AMA or some sort of larger group conversation that's more run by the people versus by the meeting organizer. Cool. But I only really use that for discussions, large discussions, not so much for standing meetings. So I'll turn that off. And then down here is our automation. So this is part of that auto setup flow. This is the button you would want to turn on or off. If you don't want the auto setup flow to happen, you turn that off. And if you don't want the email minutes to go out, you turn that off. And then down here, roll over unchecked items. If this is on, as you know, the unchecked items on the list will stay on the agenda for the next meeting. If you turn that off, it means the items will all close and be archived into that past meeting. So you have a fresh agenda each time. So you may notice we have on the existing version, we have a setting that's something similar to this, but it's reversed. It's like instead of rollover unchecked items, it is close items and archive to past meetings. So it's
Force
the opposite.
close items.
Force close. Yeah. That's force close. So just that language didn't make sense for this new way of thinking about the product. So hope that's not confusing. Whatever you have set up on your agenda now will stay into the future. So it's not going to actually force you into this process. This will be an opt-in for your existing meetings. But any new workspace that you create or any new calendar invite that you connect to will abide by these auto setup processes. Cool. That is.
If any of that was confusing to you, or you feel like you're not going to remember it, there's a built-in learn more button right below the automations, which will document it. So once it's out, you'll have all that documentation ready for you immediately. You don't really have to study it. I think the good news is we've spent a ton of time talking to customers about this and testing it ourselves, rolling it out in beta and unrolling it out in beta, that we feel so confident this is the right way to run meetings that we're just defaulting it on for every new meeting and every new customer going forward. So for us, I know myself, I turned it on all my meetings. I haven't looked back, and it's changed the way I use the app fundamentally. It's been a great experience. So I know you guys are going to like it. Main thing is like make sure your calendar is connected, make sure your workspace is connected to whatever recurring calendar event you have. We spent a huge chunk of the year already fixing a ton of bugs in the calendar sync. So if you've tried that before and it became disconnected, you should be good to try it again.
Yep. Yeah, there was a bug, I think. And then that was resolved, but we couldn't fix it retroactively. So you do have to resync your calendar. If it's already synced, you're good. If it wasn't synced, the problem, it's been fixed. And we've added some cool stuff to make sure that never desyncs again. That was like one of the main projects of Q1 and Q2 of this year, was make sure the calendar never desyncs. While we're talking about calendars, one thing to talk about is that you are able now to add multiple calendars to a Hypercontext workspace. So you can see here, this is the calendar I'm currently connected to, and there's a plus beside it. So you can tap on that plus and then add another calendar event to the workspace. And what this will do, so if I add one, if I add down here, let's go changelog C, save that. It's now going to abide by both of those recurring schedules. So whatever meeting pops up next will be the next one on the list that you'll see, and it will pop up here for you. So B is next, it's right now, and C is coming up right after. Oh, sorry, this is my test events I have. Basically, this is right now for the next hour, and then after the next hour, this one will start. Yeah. And you can obviously click on this to connect or disconnect it. You can see they're both connected to Google. I can disconnect both. If I'm having issues with my calendar for some weird reason, you can also disconnect your calendar here, disconnect that, and then reconnect into a different calendar if you want. So there's a lot of now calendar controls or customizations that are now built into our product, which make it lots easier.
And this came from a lot of our users, right? Like, there's a couple of use cases, I think, where this is needed. And so if you have a meeting on your calendar where it recurs, maybe it's 1 p.m. on Tuesday and 10 a.m. on Thursday, there's no way to set that up in your calendar as one single recurring series. You have to do that as two separate series. So because of that, you can now run that type of meeting in a single workspace in our app. Or, the other cases, if you have like a weekly one-on-one, but every fourth meeting is a growth meeting, you can connect all of that into one workspace. I know a lot of folks that use us with one-on-ones that are, they've got a large team. They find that they've already messaged in saying, hey, like, I love this, thank you. So check that out if you haven't already.
Cool. Should we move on to the next big feature? Do you want to do this one?
I'm ready.
Let's do real time. Okay. So note-taking has really become a multiplayer experience. If you look at any of the modern note-taking apps, there's always some element of real-timeness or real-time collaboration. If you look at Google Docs, who I'd say is something that obviously we're trying to achieve in our app, the ability to do Google Doc-like functionality, it's very important to know if someone else is in there with you. So when I'm running meetings, this has been incredibly helpful just to see, are they in the meeting? Are they seeing the same items I'm looking at? So if Brennan was to join this meeting, you would see him pop in right there. And so we show up to 5 people here in the list, and then we do provide a drop-down list. You can see everyone who's participating or at least joined into the meeting. So while they have this open, their face will pop up in the corner. On top of that, if I'm down here, well, actually, Brennan, if Brennan goes down here, was to look at one of these items, and so you can tell, okay, Brennan is on that item. So he's actively doing something. He's probably either editing it or he wants to talk about it next. So me as the other person in the meeting, I know not to touch this because he's actively editing it. Or let's say he's been on there for a while, but he's not doing anything. I'm able to take it over. Oh, he just left. He'll be back. There he is there. So I can take it over from him, and now I'm taking over. What's super cool, and I don't think people saw that there because of the way I took it over. If Brennan had added some content, but hadn't submitted it yet, so it's not even live into our app yet, when I take that over, whatever he's done will be pulled into the app. So you should never, ever lose content again, because anything he's currently working on, I will have pulled in even if he hasn't submitted it. And that's a super helpful feature, so that, let's say Brennan's writing a note and then he goes off to do something else. Maybe someone sent him a Slack and he has to go deal with some issue, but I really want to update that message with some more information. At least now I'll see what he's been able to do. So super helpful feature. He's also able to kick me out the same way. That works on comments, next steps, summaries, and on items as well. And I think 2 of them are live now. And then I think summaries is coming shortly. And then soon after that, next steps will show up. So really every section, we're basically adding it to all the different pieces of the product. But we have to do it in a way to make sure it works, obviously, for everyone long-term. So we're rolling out one by one just to make sure there's no issues. So that will roll out to you shortly. Anything you want to add, Brennan? It's super cool.
We use it a lot. It's been helpful in making our meetings a lot more collaborative and hands-on. I think, yeah, like Graham said, we're trying to roll this out pretty aggressively to everyone. So it's going to come out piece by piece. It's out now. Let us know if you see things, if you have improvements, send us a note. We'll focus our attention.
We did it
Hands-on
more
keyboards
like
right now for it. So it's a good
yeah.
time.
We could have done the like cursor live editing. We decided not to do that because we also don't want to like fill up your agenda with everyone's movement, because we want to make sure you stay focused on what's important. So we thought just adding the subtle little box on the side where a person's face shows up, it shows that they're typing, and then pulling in the content they've added if you want to take it over. We thought that was just a better, cleaner experience for you versus that really aggressive real time with all the arrows and like a Figma style shared.
Yeah, I think we're trying to help you run effective meetings, and you know, a simple version of an effective meeting is, you know, do you have a note taker? And I think that might be a little bit too formal of a commitment for someone to take on, but on a given topic, there might be a note taker or someone who cares a lot about it, and so they're taking notes. So we wanted to communicate who is taking notes there. That allows other people to say, okay, cool, I can contribute to the conversation instead of documenting. So I think this is a really good balance between the like live real-time distracting updates and colors, vibrant colors flying around the agenda, and, you know, the ability for everyone to collaborate productively without stepping on each other's toes. So yeah, as you play with it, if it's working, let us know. If it's not working, let us know.
Yeah. Cool. That's real time. So that's out for items and discussions right now. Sorry, items and descriptions. And then it should be added shortly for the summaries and next steps. And then we'll add it to the rest of the app. So goals will be after that. Cool. The next thing up is note-taking experience updates. So you remember before, you were able to add Markdown to the app. So you could, inside a description here, you can add the Markdown elements.
I don't know if anyone knew that. I think very
no?
few people
Okay.
knew that. We knew that. I think our power users knew that.
Okay, you're a power user. Thank you for finding Markdown in the app. It was great for engineers who already use Markdown in GitHub and other apps that are engineering focused. So, but our users are not those. Well, they are those users, but they're more of the some users. But
some bumped into it and we're like, I'm really grateful for you guys.
Yeah. And that was the feedback we got for the last 3 months or the last 6 months since we launched that. We launched that just earlier this year, like back in like January, was they didn't realize we had a rich text editor because it doesn't look like we do. If you just look here, you don't see rich text at all. You just see text. And that's great. At the same time, it's not great because you don't know you can actually do fancy things. So inside of this, if you were to highlight a word, you do see this bar pop up with the ability to customize how the information is formatted, and then here as well with like more of the item level versus the paragraph level stuff. So I can bold an item, I can italicize, I can select a whole big section and do something with it. So if I underline all of that, and that all works. I can also add bullet points. So if I do that, now I am right bullet point. And then I can also tab in to get the secondary bullet point, shift tab back out to get to the first level. So the second level, first level, you get the idea here. And then if you don't like the command shortcuts, you can actually just do list item 1, list item 2, oops, 2, list item 3. I can just highlight all 3 of those. They can highlight all 3 and change this to both list. Cool. And that works throughout the, oh, go ahead, Ben.
I was going to say, like, again, we work really hard to like make this a non-intrusive UI pattern, but at the same time, make it seem familiar and obvious that it's there. So if you've been using us for a while and maybe haven't bumped into some of it, you might notice that things like Control or Command B, those shortcuts that you're used to in Google Docs or Word will all work. And the other piece to it, I think, is often overlooked. If you were to copy something from a Word doc or a Google Doc, say a bulleted list, it'll come over here and maintain that formatting, which I know is huge for a lot of folks. So a lot of little subtle things in here that I think, you know, add up to a pretty big difference in getting your full team to adopt.
Exactly. And the power here in a meeting, on top of what you're seeing here, is if I go to a different meeting, like this other changelog, different workspace, oh, close it down here. I must have deleted it, but you have the ability to put in links to things. So we use that in meetings to link to our roadmap or link to Figma design. So our customers or our teammates can actually look and see what needs to be changed in items. That's super, super helpful.
Yeah, there's definitely some secret things in there that you might like. For example, the as Graham's saying, the links, colors. If you're ever running a meeting where you want a red, yellow, green, something, we do that weekly with the colors. The nice thing is we started at this meeting, everyone voted to switch to light mode, but if someone on your team is in dark mode, those colors are context aware, so they kind of change to accommodate the individual's theme. And the other subtle thing is there's a way to do emojis as well. So one of our meetings we actually do red, yellow, greens with emojis. So if you need to, you can hit colon just like you would in Slack, and you can just start typing out a particular emoji and bring that in. So sort of no matter how you communicate, yeah, Graham's got it here. We do red, yellow, green with fruit. It was a summer themed idea, and it sort of has stuck. So there's green apples, and
I think Brennan was hungry that day.
Yeah, clearly. But there's one other piece of this, Graham, that you haven't shown that a user told us about.
That is true. I don't have a good thing with me. Oh, that's Kermit the Frog.
That was pretty good. I don't know why you have that handy, but that was pretty good.
Oh yeah, I have all those guys handy. Cool. So the other thing is you can paste in screenshots. So you saw that I had Kermit the Frog there. I just pasted him into the app. So that's super helpful if you want to add a screenshot or add more context to your talking points. This is kind of what Hypercontext is about. It's just giving you the tools to add the most context to your meetings so you can have the best conversations and be high performant. So we felt that was super helpful. And what's cool is that you could do that before in Markdown, but now that we have Delta support, yeah, it's just a lot more fluid. And then here's Kermit the Frog. Super exciting. Is that the feature?
That's the feature. Yeah.
Cool. Did it.
I know a lot of folks sometimes do screenshots of dashboards or reports or whatever.
That's true.
So,
yeah. I probably could have chosen more business related images.
No, that's a good one.
Frog, but yeah, I have all the Muppets ready to go for any kind of demos. Just
the
most fun.
Check it out, try it out. You can have huge images in there. Something again, like customers kind of brought us to here. So we're actually working to do like further things like that, embedded images, embedded, other apps, etc. that we're thinking about going forward. So try it out. Let us know what you think. New.
Cool. And then, there's a whole bunch of smaller little features. I think it's probably better to go through some questions versus actually show those features. But a high level on just some of those, we did improve a lot of the guest experience. So when you have Hypercontext and you roll it out to your business, there's a chance that one of your employees will invite someone external to your business. And so you could be nervous that that's going to increase your bill. It won't, because if you set up the domain limiting part of Hypercontext, where just you only pay for your people with your email domain, anyone outside will just be shown as a guest inside your platform. And what we've done is just give them a limited set of functionality that they can use to the product. And they would show up on your workspace like this as a guest. So if I click on the 3 members and 1 guest, you can see them show up here with a little hotel badge beside them. Obviously, as a demo, this person should have shown up as an actual member and this person a guest, but I've actually done some other tweaks to the app. So that's why that happened. Anyway, guest users, pretty cool.
Pretty cool. We have 16 minutes left according to our app. I will maybe take over and just give everyone a quick glance of some of the things we're thinking about. If you're curious about any of the things we're thinking about, you should let us know and talk to us. Reach it to me or someone on the team. My email is just brennan@hypercontext.com. And let's build some of these things together. Otherwise, spend some time writing a question in the question area or the chat area, and we'll get to it at the very end. So a couple of things that are coming soon that I think everyone's going to like. The first is just some new item editing controls. You're probably used to some of the item, how items look on an agenda. We're tweaking some of the quick shortcuts. So every item below the item will have a plus next steps button and an add notes button. To add notes is actually adding a summary. We're going to tweak some of that language. I think that will help adoption on the team. Like people are looking for ways to add notes. We're just shortening the path to get there. But on top of that, there'll be a little bit of a focus mode. So instead of that hover bar that sometimes gets in your way, I know for me, it gets in my way. Instead, we're changing a little bit to a card mode where you have your title, your description, and you can see some of the quick actions there, next steps, add notes, comments, attachments, etc. All the stuff you're used to, maybe in the pop-up that sometimes appears, we're bringing that right into the agenda. As you click into an item, you're going to get those additional controls. As you click out, they're going to go away unless there's obviously content to show. So I think you will all like that. This is just a diagram to show that we've thought about a lot of these little things. We care about these little things. If you have thoughts on it, let us know. But a lot of this has come from feedback from users. So that will come soon. Two other pieces that we're working on that are coming out soon. And again, if you're interested in this, reach out to the team or myself. The first is manager and org wide reporting. Been working on this over the summer. We're kind of getting to a point now where I think we know what we're about to deploy to our users. Graham made me blur all of these slides for two reasons. One is maybe they were too pretty. And the second is we've had people in the past copy some of the things that we talk about in these things. So we're looking at reporting that will be really helpful for managers to run better meetings. We think we've keyed on a couple key things that are really neat there. Beyond, we've looked at some things that will really help managers of managers coach and guide their their first-time managers maybe that are on their team, both on one-on-ones, OKRs, time management, things like that. So I think we've come up with something that will be really valuable for you to run your team independently. Maybe take some screenshots, show off to your boss, and show how cool you are. And then I think we've come up with some things that will be really cool for that person you're sharing those reports to. To say, wow, more people should get on this. It'd be pretty neat.
And so what I also like that why you've blurred it out is that if you want to see this and to give us feedback on it, you can book a meeting with Brennan to go over what we're thinking about it. And that will help inform how this actually rolls out to everyone else. So it's a teaser to get you to have that meeting and tell us how you would use this information. And that will help me build it.
We'll include some links in the follow-up about that if you're curious about any of it. This has been a journey of user feedback. So I've probably done 40, 50 calls with users, admins of Hypercontext at various different organizations who have very directly nudged us in the right direction. We started, I think, going the wrong way, and they put us back on the rails. So would love to test some of that with you. If that's interesting to you, if you care about what charts and tables could look like, let us know. So the one of the other things that's up next is integrations for us. I think there's like 3 or 4 different ways that we're thinking about integrating all of the other tools that you're using through your workday, work week, bringing them into our app. And so excited to share with everyone how that's going to work within Hypercontext. But again, Graham made me blur it out because it's too cool to show.
It's so cool. It's too cool. And I wanted us to be the first ones to actually get it out there versus someone else seeing it and be able to do it quicker.
That's right. So I've shown it again to probably 40, 50, maybe even 60 folks, and 40, 50, maybe even 60 times I've seen eyes open and say, wow, that's the coolest part about it. I think maybe what I'll say here, if you were to unblur all of this, I think the thought that we have is that meetings are not just where people come together and people leave. They're also where information comes together and information leaves. So trying to help you reduce that tool fatigue, bringing information into meetings from other tools and pushing information out to other tools from our app. So that's as far as I can go without getting the hook from Graham.
I'm surprised.
And I've already said too much.
You said a lot. I'm really surprised you were able to actually like blur it out. I'm surprised you didn't sneak anything in there. I thought you
I didn't. No, I didn't. If you want a sneak peek you can book some time with me, and I'm very happy to show it to anyone who will listen. I think it's going to be really cool. All that's out of the way. We get 9 minutes for questions. Maybe if we're lucky, we can actually see Graham's meeting auto finish, or at least the timer click out, but I'll stop.
Yeah, I'll put it back up. Yep.
Anonymous attendee asks, when do you think the reporting will be widely available?
Yes, reporting, you'll have it in phases. So there are 3 major sections of it, and I'm working on each one of those kind of in order. So definitely end of October, you'll have the first phase will be available. And that might be just to select customers just to make sure we get it right. And then it'll roll out through the rest of the quarter. So by the end of the year, you'll definitely have probably pieces of all 3 sections. And then for the second year, probably early Q1, it'll be way more viral in how it goes out. So people will be able to share things and bring other people back into it. It's very cool. So throughout Q4 and early Q1 2023. Good question.
Good question, Anonymous. We answered it last.
Yes.
It is very cool.
In a similar vein, integrations is the one after that. So that's basically the next project on deck after these other 2 projects roll out. So probably I'd say Q1, you might start to see something go live. And we've done it. The design is in a way that we add one, then we basically have the ability to add all at once. So it's going to be pretty inclusive. Yeah, should be cool.
That's exactly it. We had a head of product say at a California company today say, those graphs are really pretty. How do you input the data? And the good news about all of the reports that we're talking about is it requires no change to how you're using the app. We're taking the data that we currently have, that we're currently collecting, both from the calendar, the agendas that you're running, the goals that you're next steps, and the goals that you're already inputting, that we're obviously already making better with the new item content controls. We're using that data that we already have to give reports to companies around the world that otherwise couldn't see some of that stuff. We have Nicole. Do you have any suggestions for getting your team to adopt Hypercontext at your company? What's the adoption solution?
Talking to me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, from my perspective, though, it's easy to just bring in a new tool because I can do it from my level and be like, engineers, everyone use this. That would fail terribly. So now, for us, like if I look at all the tools you've ever brought in, you try it out with usually one person and start to use it and see if there's value there. And ideally, you can articulate what the value is. So I'd say with Hypercontext, organize notes and conversation starters for early managers. So for me to get the one level below me, my manager level, it's a no-brainer to just say, hey, use Hypercontext and just click the 3 or 4 buttons that are going to get you an agenda that's filled out with the right types of conversations that are holistic to each employee. And then click another couple buttons, and then you have the best-in-class goals that we've curated from amazing people across the industry in tech. And then you're basically just have the conversation and then click another couple buttons in Hypercontext, and then the conversations happen automatically and they just keep going. So that's me is how I would sell it to my team. And then it's based on usage. So as long as they're using it, if they're getting value, they'll get that aha moment of, oh man, my team are actually adding good value or good quality content back into the app. And therefore we're having great conversations. And ideally, by having conversations, especially around your goals, you're more likely to hit your goals. Therefore you become high performant. So it should just naturally bubble up.
I'll echo that. I think the thing that I'm often, sharing with new users particularly is start small, right? Like there's going to be one person on your team who is into new apps, and there's going to be a whole bunch of people on your team who are like, I feel tool fatigue. Mm-hmm. And so I think you want to probably start with that one person who's into new apps, and I would run that one-on-one on Hypercontext until you now have not just yourself as a fan, but that other person as a fan. And then I would try to replicate some of that success one-on-one by one-on-one, right? Add it to those other one-on-ones and show yourself, show your team that it's not additional work. The only edit, maybe additional change to that a little bit would be just to communicate the unspoken things that you're doing, right? So if you are going to add it to this one-on-one. I think what you'd want to say is, hey, I use this with Bob. He and I have been running Hypercontext in our one-on-one. It's been going really well. I want to try it with you for a couple of weeks. Please add items to the agenda in advance of the meeting so we can see how it works. Just say those words either out loud or in a written form, get confirmation on it so that there's awareness that you're testing these things out. You can even say if it doesn't work, we'll ditch it, but would love for you to kick the tires on this tool a little bit the next couple of weeks. And that setting of expectations, I think, goes a long way.
Yep, I agree with you on that. There's 1 minute left.
Well, Graham, you didn't even talk about the fact that agendas have titles now.
Agendas have titles. I didn't. It's true. I know. I missed that part. Yeah. So you can set a title for your agenda now. So I think for those who have the finish meeting button, there's a little arrow that you click, and then you could set the title. No one ever used it. But if you don't set the title, so I've set it here to September 28th, 2022 Q3 changelog. You can change this to anything you want. And when the meeting finishes, that's what the title will be for that past meeting. If you leave it as blank, it will become the date and time that you posted it. If you yeah, that's it. That's all I'll say. I'll let the rest be magic, because that magic moment is pretty cool.
And what else can we say? I think that's about it. So if you're checking out Graham's screen right now, you'll see that the meeting has ended. There's 0 seconds left. And we're going to be sharing notes in 60 minutes. So for the folks who know what the finish meeting button does, that means that in 59 minutes, we're going to automatically click that finish meeting button for Graham. Whatever settings he's checked off in the automations are going to be abided by. So if you've decided to send notes, it will send notes. Roll over unchecked items are going to roll over. And without doing anything, your next meeting is going to be set up automatically. So right now, what I'll say is make sure all of your meetings are connected to the calendar. And coming in a couple of days, you'll be able to try that on for size, turn it on selectively, make sure it works. I know for us, it's been pretty very positive change. All right, everyone. Thank you for coming. Thanks for attending.